Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Unnamed Podcast. And of course, I am your host Akash, aka Evil Monkey. The Unnamed Podcast में मैं बात करता हूँ कुछ ऐसी अमेजिंग पर्सनालिटीज़ के साथ जो अपने काम से अपनी लाइफ में तो चेंजेस ला ही रहे हैं, साथ ही साथ सोसाइटी में भी अमेजिंग चेंजेस ला रहे हैं. एंड इन केस यू आर दैट समबडी जो फिनोमिनल काम कर रहे हैं अपनी लाइफ में और साथ ही साथ सोसाइटी को भी ट्रांसफॉर्म करने में हेल्प कर रहे हैं, देन फील फ्री टू ड्रॉप मी अ मैसेज ऑन evilmonkeyden@gmail.com. That's the email ID, and we will get cracking and hopefully you will be on the podcast. I'll be talking to you. And well, अगर आज के गेस्ट की बात करें तो well, he is a very special person. His name is Dr. Dinesh Verma. He is an ophthalmologist, यानी कि वो आंखों के डॉक्टर हैं और apart from doctor, he is also a surgeon. And well, उन्होंने अपने करियर की शुरुआत ऑल इंडिया इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ मेडिकल साइंसेज से करी थी. Then he went to UK to do further studies. Then he started practicing over there, and then he actually went to US and he did some phenomenal work in the field of ophthalmology with the help of AI, यानी कि artificial intelligence के साथ. So you can understand that he is a very futuristic man who has got his eyes on the future. तो चलिए दिनेश से बात करते हैं. लेट्स टॉक अबाउट हिज जर्नी इनटू द फील्ड ऑफ ऑप्थोमोलॉजी और किस तरीके से उनको लगता है कि AI is transforming medical sciences and especially India कितना आगे है या कितना पीछे है इस फील्ड में. एंड देन वन मोर थिंग जो उन्होंने मेरे को बताई थी दैट ही इज़ ऑल्सो स्टार्टिंग मेडिकल लीगल प्रैक्टिस इन इंडिया. सो इसके बारे में उनसे बात करेंगे. सो लेट्स गो एंड टॉक टू दिनेश वर्मा एंड लेट्स गेट क्रैकिंग. And what's happening right now? So you are in Scotland right now while we're recording,
so.
right?
Yes, I'm sitting in front of River Clyde on the marina. That's where my apartment is.
Nice. Oh, so you got a nice view from your apartment,
yes,
huh?
I'm looking at all the boats now.
Nice. So how is the situation there? Like, is it like the wave has passed in Scotland or is it still there?
जो main peak था वो तो हो गया है. So at the moment they are on the decline. So नए केस बहुत कम हो गए हैं और there is no deaths reported for the last I think more than a week. So they've passed the peak. Scotland is well under control.
That's good. And जब तुम पहुंचे वहाँ स्कॉटलैंड, so like you had to stay in 14-day quarantine. So how did you kill your time here? Like what exactly did you did to get past the boredom and everything, because you can't step outside the house?
I had a lot of things to do anyway. First to catch up with all my posts from the time that I was away, all the bills to pay and all the other things to do. And in fact, when I came, there was no electricity, there was no internet. So I had to get all those things connected back. And then I was doing my own, work. I do a bit of painting, I do sketching. I also read a lot of books. I'm actually writing a couple of books at the moment. So one is quite at the advanced stage. So I kept busy.
So like talking about your career, so like how and like basically when you decided to become an ophthalmologist?
So this was when I was studying at Maulana Azad Medical College as an undergraduate.
Okay.
And in the third year we start on clinical subjects. So उससे पहले तो हम anatomy, physiology वैसी वाली चीजें करते. So clinical में we had a professor of ophthalmology, Professor B.S. Jan. He was the one who inspired me. So he told us a very interesting thing. He says, ophthalmology is the only branch, at that time he's talking about 1976, 77. He said, ophthalmology is the only branch where you can go on a weekend, do a camp and treat 200 patients free, and then come back into your practice and earn a lot of money. So it's much easier to do your sort of charity work as well as have a very good lifestyle with practice, which was true and it is still true. I think even though a lot of things have changed over the years with new equipment coming and becoming expensive, at that time setting up practice
Right.
in ophthalmology was very easy. So that was sort of the start of my thinking process. And then I
Mm-hmm.
decided to apply for the All India Institute of Medicine position for a residency in RP Center. And I got
Okay.
through that. It's one of the toughest exams in the world. So we had
Okay.
only 6 seats for ophthalmology in AIMS. 6.
Oh,
And there
wow.
were probably
Wow.
like 1 lakh people appearing all over India, because it's India based, it's not just
My
Delhi.
God.
So it was a tough exam,
Okay.
but I went through that, passed it, and here I am, an ophthalmologist.
What was the scope of your practice at that point of time? Because I'm pretty sure that it was not that much like an advanced situation at that point of
Yes,
time.
that's absolutely true. But ophthalmology was becoming a kind of cutting edge practice already, because we were introducing new techniques at that time. So, for example, cataract
Mm-hmm.
surgery, which had been almost the same for over 100 years, uh, had
Mm-hmm.
suddenly had a surge of change in technology, where we started putting in lens implants in the eye. Before that, you just take the cataract out and give them those thick glasses, वो मोटे मोटे जो चश्मे होते हैं ना, वो दिया करते थे patients को. So while I was in RP Center, we put in the first intraocular implant, the lens, artificial lens in the eye. So those things, revolutionary
Oh,
things
okay.
were coming. Uh, so उस
Mm-hmm.
हिसाब से ophthalmology became the specialty of choice, sort of during that time or just after that. Before that, it wasn't considered. People were not considering it as a top specialty. Most of my contemporaries who were toppers like me in Maulana Azad, they went into medicine or pediatrics, specialities like
Okay.
that. But ophthalmology has now become the most sought after since the
Uh,
revolution in technology and other things which is happening.
Okay, nice, nice, nice. And so, like, when we talk about your journey, your especially your professional journey, so like your journey began from India, then to UK, and then to US, and then back to India again. So, like, how was this whole journey altogether?
So I've had a very, very interesting journey. After finishing from All India Institute, I went straight to UK, having passed the exams. So there
Okay.
were 2 very tough exams to pass, and I
Mm-hmm.
got the registration to become a trainee in the UK. That was the system at that time. But
Okay.
as a trainee, you are paid, so you are employed by the National Health Service,
Mm-hmm.
but you also study for further exams. So I did all my fellowship exams all in first attempt, which was a rare feat at that time. My consultant,
Okay.
English consultant, told me that he took 7 attempts to pass the exam, which I passed in
Oh.
first attempt. So my training in All India Institute came in really handy, because what I realized
Mm-hmm.
was that we in India are very thorough in theory and also in practice, because we used to go to camps to do cataract surgery, but more so in the
Mm-hmm.
theoretical aspects, which the English training system did not have that.
Mm-hmm.
And partly it is because
Okay.
we focus totally on our profession in India, while people here, they do lots of other things. So they would have a life outside medicine as a medical student and as a
Exactly.
postgraduate student.
Okay.
So I came to UK
Okay.
and did my 5 years of training, passed my fellowship exams, and in fact, I came back to India because that was the plan always.
Mm-hmm.
So 1988, I
Okay.
actually came back to India and in practice stayed for another 3.5 years, but I didn't enjoy that part at all.
Okay. And why is
Well,
that?
mainly because of the kind of unethical practices which went on. There was a lot of cut practice, where you give sort of commission to the referring
Okay.
डॉक्टर्स और वो सब
Okay.
जो चीजें मुझे बिल्कुल भी पसंद नहीं थी. और यूके में रहने के
Okay.
बाद you feel very odd, even talking about money, because here the system was National Health Service where the patients don't pay anything upfront. There is some private
Oh.
practice, but that's a small uh, portion of your whole practice. So otherwise, you're
Oh.
employed as a full-time salaried person. So it's very, very
Mhm.
ethical practice, unlike in America. So Indian system is more like US system, while the UK
Okay.
system is mainly social medicine in the sense it is provided by the government, free at the point of delivery for the patients. They don't pay anything.
Okay. Oh, that's
Yeah.
nice.
So that was a sort of a shock. So at that time, one of my consultants who had trained me, the English consultant, he came for a conference to India, and he saw what
Mhm.
was going on, and he knew that I was unhappy, even though I was earning good amount of money. But the way it was being
Mhm.
done, I was doing ghost surgery for one of the top surgeons. So he was telling all the patients that
Oh.
he's operating. And by this
Oh.
time, I had specialized into a very super specialized field of eyes, which is retinal surgery, vitreoretinal
Okay.
surgery, which is actually the back of the eye, where the layer जो पर्दा होता है आंखों के पर्दों की सर्जरी रेटिना.
Mhm.
सो
Oh
उसके
wow.
लिए उसके पास स्किल्स नहीं थी, एंड वेरी फ्यू पीपल एट दैट टाइम यूज्ड टू डू दैट. मगर I
Okay.
won't want to name him, but in fact, there were 3 other senior surgeons who also engaged my services. Magar, none of them were
Okay.
willing to give me the name. So
Mhm.
when my English consultant saw this, and he was very perceptive, he could make out immediately what was
Mhm.
going on. So he
Correct.
told me, he says, Dinesh, what you are doing is nothing short of medical prostitution. These are his words.
Oh
So
my
I
God.
got completely, you can imagine, and he was my mentor. He was really, really. So he
Absolutely.
says, come back and I'll get you a job. Literally,
Oh,
he
that's
offered me a
nice.
job while
That's been.
sitting in India. So, and
Oh
that's
wow.
exactly what happened. Went back and I got a senior consultant position straight away. So that journey
Okay.
was very, very fruitful, and I gained a lot of experience, as well as did a lot of work, served a lot of patients, operated on thousands and thousands. I used to do high volume cataract surgery, as well as I was doing the specialized vitreoretinal surgery. And then I got
Okay.
involved into technology for
Right.
areas of where technology can help medicine. So I started
Hmm.
research with the University of Hull, where we
Okay.
developed the world's first virtual reality simulator for this retinal type of surgery, surgery on the retina.
Oh,
That was, yeah.
oh,
So
that's
we
nice.
published on that in the Nature publication I, which is world's topmost
Mm-hmm.
publication, and that project made my name there as a technology, ophthalmology technology guy. So very few people do both things. You are either
Okay.
practicing as an eye surgeon or you are a technology,
Hmm.
but I sort of became known as person who understands both. So based on that,
Hmm.
I was offered a PPP Medical Foundation Award. So this is a medical foundation
Oh,
based in
nice.
London, and
Acha.
they give an award, what is called a mid-career award. So people like me who've been doing in practice for 10, 15 years or in their own profession and want to do something different. So in the middle of your
Mm-hmm.
career, you say, oh, I want to try something different. So based on that, I
Right.
got a 1 year fully paid sabbatical to go to US. And I was
Nice.
offered the research position for a year in Johns Hopkins University Hospital, the top hospital, number one in the world. And there I was carrying out this cutting edge research on virtual reality simulation, on telemedicine, and also I was part of a team where we developed world's first retinal chip implant. So this was a project where blind people were operated upon and put a computer chip inside their eye, and they could see again. So I was actively involved in that project. Yeah, the initial surgeries we did were on on dogs, and so I was actually operating because that time it was my research sabbatical. So I was part of the research. And then the same team decided to move to Los Angeles to set up a new retinal institute in University of Southern California and Doheny Retina Institute. So they offered me a faculty position there with clinical work and research both together. And they said, why don't you come with us? So I resigned from my job in England because till this time I was on a sabbatical. But after that, I decided to go with them and spent another 2 years with the same team working on technology related to ophthalmology. So there we set up a very, very exciting, again, world's first project where we carried out screening for the changes in the retina that diabetes causes by using digital photographs. That was the first time. In fact, I wrote an article. At that time, there was a controversy going on in Hollywood about whether to use film. You know, films have always been celluloid because they were using film.
Right.
And that's the time, 2002, where the digital technology was coming. And the controversy was whether they could accept a digital film for Oscars. So I wrote an article, Hollywood versus Ophthalmology, where I drew a parallel because we were having exactly the same discussion in our medical ophthalmology field, where people were saying, wow, you can't take a photograph of the retina by digital. You know, it's not as good as the real thing, which is celluloid, which is film. So that was a revolutionary project because we were able to take the photographs in the primary care setting. So GP practices or patients coming to primary care clinics, जैसे यहाँ पे dispensary होती हैं, primary care clinic होते हैं, वैसे वहाँ पे there was a population of immigrant Mexicans, Mexican Americans who had a very, very high incidence of diabetes. So there were about 14-15% of them were diabetic because of their diet and because of the way lifestyle. But they had no access to healthcare. So their healthcare access was poor because most of them were not insured. And the American system is. So I was head of the retina unit in a hospital called County Hospital in Los Angeles, which was meant for patients who don't have insurance. So they used to come up there. 90% of our clientele were Mexican American. We call them Latinos. So this project that I was pioneering, and we got a good grant from California Endowment, was to set up a screening system where we would take the cameras to the periphery and get the technician to take a photograph. And then these photographs were transmitted through online into our institute in Los Angeles, which had a digital reading center. So again, this was the first digital reading center set up at that time in the world. And the problem there was that ophthalmologists didn't have time to look at just retinal images because 60 to 70% would have been normal. because these are just patients who have diabetes, but they don't have any changes as such. But we still need to screen them because they may not have any symptoms. So they didn't have time because they were operating and earning a lot of money by doing their practices. So I decided that this is the time to introduce artificial intelligence into this. So I wrote an algorithm. I wrote the sort of the logic of the algorithm, which was written by the software engineers there, which could convert the findings that the technicians were seeing on the photograph. So the photograph is also read by a non-physician, not a doctor, not an ophthalmologist. We just taught them you have to fill in the blanks to say there are 4 dots here, they are red color, they are yellow color. But then my algorithm would convert that into medical terminology to say this patient has no diabetic retinopathy, this patient has mild, this patient has moderate. So that we then did a trial as a randomized trial, and there was concurrence of about 97%. So 97% of the patients had same result if an ophthalmologist saw or if a technician saw and went through my software. So that was...
So that makes medical sciences very approachable to ordinary people.
Absolutely. Then. And also the efficiency increases, the cost effectiveness. Because you're using artificial intelligence, you can scale it very, very quickly, because you can basically do 100 images in an hour going through the software, while for a ophthalmologist to look at 100 images would take a lot of time and give a diagnosis.
Exactly.
And will cost...
It's a different manual thing than to do it.
So...
and what year was this?
This is 2002, 2003, between that.
So that's around 20 years back.
And that project was called the Tino Dream Project, Diabetic Retinopathy Evaluation and Management. And that was really a dream at that time. But then when I came back to England, obviously England was still behind in these things. This was US, and not only just US, it was the top universities in US. So we were actually doing futuristic things. Things would now become, after 20 years, people are talking about those things which we were doing at that time as a pioneer. So in England, things were very difficult to introduce these kind of things. So I took up a job where I was just doing surgery and, getting my earnings from there. But I started working on a project on my own, where I invented a device using the virtual reality simulator concept, whereby we could do certain tests as if you are sitting in a eye clinic. So just like you go to optician and you go through series of tests, but you could do that using a virtual reality simulator. So
that's
I call that a personal ophthalmic diagnostic system. So the idea was that you could actually put it on your, just like putting on glasses, it's a VR system. And you go through a series of tests and the questions are asked through the software. And the response is a voice recognition software. So that was a very, very exciting project, which I then brought to India.
Oh, okay. And what was the reception for that in India?
So it was, again, very exciting time, because things in India were sort of changing and people were getting more aware of the technology. So we managed to, the first thing that happened was we got shortlisted for an award in Bombay IIT. It was a competition called Eureka. And in that, we got runners-up prize for this concept of personal diagnostic system. So after that,
Okay.
a lot of angel investors approached me. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
Indian Angel Network offered me 3 crore rupees for that to develop the device into a prototype. But
Okay.
unfortunately, last minute, I did not sign the contract because they wanted me to leave ophthalmology altogether and just do the business. At that time, I
Oh,
was
okay.
not ready for that. But we did get a
Mm-hmm.
good grant from the Department of Biotechnology, BIREC. There was a big ignition
Okay.
grant, which we
Mm-hmm.
used to create the first prototype for the pods, for the personal ophthalmic diagnostic system. So that
Okay.
was my sort of nutshell of my journey from India to UK to US, and then back again to UK, and then
Yeah.
back to India. And that's
Right.
how
Right.
things unfolded.
That's nice and nice. And like for now, like if we talk about current situation, so like, which is your area of interest right now?
So, because I got so much involved in technology side of things,
Mm.
that obviously has been at the forefront of all the things that I'm doing now. So, one of the things is telemedicine.
Okay.
Because of the project that we did with diabetic retinopathy there and the device, all these things are linked to that you can provide a service from a distance by
Hmm.
using digital technology. So that is the
So
basic
like what
concept.
basically now like there are so many online things happening in India also.
Yes, absolutely. So this is now become a really thing of today because of COVID. So COVID
Right.
19 crisis has brought telemedicine technology to the forefront. Prior to
Hmm.
that, the Medical Council of India, had
Mm-hmm.
actually said that telemedicine is illegal in India.
Oh.
And in fact, there were a couple of cases against the doctors of
Oh.
negligence where
Okay.
they had given an opinion on the telephone,
Mm-hmm.
and the patient sued them saying that this was, the wrong opinion, and the doctors lost the case
Oh.
because they had not followed the guidelines. And the guidelines at that time were that you cannot do telemedicine. So you should not give an opinion or give a prescription on the phone.
Right.
But then came the COVID 19 pandemic,
Hmm.
and they realized that you have to now do everything
Telemedicine.
from a distance.
Right.
So that has brought my area of special interest complete, which I was trying to promote for 20 years, but there were not very many takers, suddenly into the
Hmm.
forefront. So that is
Right.
one area which I'm very keen to develop further in India, provide that
Mm-hmm.
kind of service to companies who are developing telemedicine systems, and also to hospitals who want to set up those systems for ophthalmology, and also integrate my device into a
Okay.
telemedicine system. So that is one area. And
Right.
also the second area is medical legal negligence
Mm-hmm.
aspect. As I said, telemedicine was one of the things where regulations became uh, apparent now, but there are a lot of other areas where medical negligence is proven on the basis of what evidence the doctors can provide. And from
Okay.
that point of view, I have a lot of experience in UK. While in UK, I did a lot of medical legal work, which means I was
Okay.
representing uh, on both sides, either the patients as an expert witness to
Mm-hmm.
say
Mm-hmm.
that this is what has happened, the patient has suffered this kind of side effects or this adverse reaction because of negligence.
Hmm.
Also, on the side of the surgeons, the doctors, to say, no, this was, expected, this should have been explained, and things like informed consent and other things which come in technical. So I had
Right.
involvement, and I have appeared in British courts, as an expert witness and had very good feedback from the judges. Very senior judges
Okay.
have given a written feedback saying this is the best expert advice we've had, expert witness we've had. So that part now is becoming more relevant in India. Till now,
Okay.
India was not that keen on. We did have a Consumer Protection Act, which came about a
Mm-hmm.
few years ago. So that started
Right.
to wake people up
Right.
towards this area. So,
Hmm.
from the patient's point of view, it is very important that in case there has been a negligence, then they
Hmm.
should be able to take it up further and get a compensation, adequate compensation,
Right.
which was not happening, most of the times before the Consumer Protection Act came in. But
Right.
then the balance can also tilt to the other side, where
Mm-hmm.
a lot of patients would just do a frivolous case so that they can make money. So what I provide as an independent practitioner, independent specialist in Indian healthcare system is
Hmm.
to provide a sort of non-biased, unbiased opinion.
Okay.
So, because I'm not in practice doing surgery at the moment in India, I can say this surgeon has done the right thing, or
Mm-hmm.
no, there has been a negligence, without the fear that my community will, people will stop referring me patients or whatever. And so I can act on both sides
Right.
as an honest broker in that sense.
Right.
So
Okay.
that's an area that I would like to develop further.
Okay. And like, what fields are you going to provide this medical legal help to people and to doctors also?
So obviously we'll start with ophthalmology because that is my
Mm-hmm.
special area of interest. But then
Right.
technology is another one. So how do they set up the medical, set up the telemedicine systems
Right.
without getting into medical legal trouble? So you
Mm-hmm.
have to follow the MCI guidelines. You have to follow some technology norms,
Right.
patient confidentiality, encryption, and
Mm-hmm.
also the consent. How can you take consent from a distance? Patient does not come to you. How do they
Right.
sign up? How do you send prescriptions without having legal issues of, sending it by email? So all
Right.
those things I have the expertise in,
Mm-hmm.
and that I can help. And as I said before, it has now become, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, this has become a real, big issue that needs to be resolved.
Correct. And when talking about the COVID situation right now, so like, how do you think that AI, which you also mentioned, is going to play an important role during these times, and what would be the way forward for people as far as AI is concerned?
So that's a very good question. So basically, AI has two components.
Right.
AI, one would be setting up algorithms so that a guidance can be given to the doctor
Right.
as to the likely diagnosis, likely possibility. So instead
Right.
of a doctor going back to his medical books or going back in his experience of years or trying to look up the internet and look at literature, the
Mm-hmm.
artificial intelligence is providing him with a possible likelihoods of probability. So
Correct.
if a patient is sending that information online, it
Mm-hmm.
is very difficult to doctor to go through the whole thing and then make a diagnosis. Uh, while artificial intelligence can help in that area to
Okay.
say this patient is likely to have, based on the information provided and based
Mm-hmm.
on whatever investigations have been done, if you feed that into the algorithm, it can
Right.
give a possible likelihood of the diagnosis. So you can say there is 70% chance this patient is this, there is 20%
Okay.
chance this, like that.
Okay.
Second component is machine learning.
Okay.
So as more and more patients go through that system, you have more and
Hmm.
more people giving their data and the data is
Correct.
being analyzed. The
Right.
machine itself learns. So you
Okay.
can improve the accuracy of that system
Hmm.
based on your previous learning experience. So the machine learns. And that
Right.
is an amazing thing, which, as a human being, they can be very, very fast. So in ophthalmology, to give you an example, there was a project set up by DeepMind from Google. And they set up this project at Moorfields Eye Hospital, which is the one of the pioneering, largest teaching hospital in the world, providing eye care service. And with Moorfields, what they did was they got 20 ophthalmologists in this research project, and they looked at medical notes, ophthalmology notes, and all the investigations with their retinal images and their other digital data.
Okay.
And they got DeepMind, which is an AI system developed by Google,
Okay.
DeepMind to analyze those pictures, to analyze
Hmm.
those investigation data, and
Hmm.
come up with a diagnosis. And at the same
Okay.
time, the doctors, the 20 top ophthalmologists, were doing the same. And then
Okay.
after 3 years, they compared that
Okay.
what happened in the first day when they came, when they saw these pictures, this is what the
Hmm.
doctor said. And then the artificial intelligence said this diagnosis. And after three
Okay.
years, this is what happened. This was the final diagnosis. And it turns out that the DeepMind AI system was actually better than the ophthalmologists.
Okay.
And they were the top ophthalmologists
Okay.
of the world. So you can imagine an average would have done even worse.
Even worse. Exactly.
So that's an area of artificial intelligence which has become very relevant with the COVID-19 crisis, because
Hmm.
you're not able to see the patients physically. All the patients you can't see physically. You're only seeing
Exactly.
emergencies or surgical patients.
Exactly.
So to be able to make a provisional diagnosis just by using a software
Hmm.
makes a lot of sense.
Exactly.
And then you can pick and choose out of those who would require surgery or who would need treatment, or you can send prescription online.
Hmm.
So it has made things much easier if that technology is used.
Okay. And like when we talk about like especially for eyes and like if we talk about machines and everything being a part of it, so many people might say that it might invade your privacy, because like many of these phones nowadays use retinal scans, and many places, many organizations have also, because of the COVID-19, have actually started either using retinal scans, and many people might say that using machines and machines learning about your eyes and everything could lead to stealing of your identity. So how do you think that will be answered?
Yes, I mean, obviously, privacy and data privacy and patient confidentiality, these are big issues. And that is where the people who are in technology side of things come in very, very handy, because you can then create systems which have encryption. You can have ensure that the data is not stolen, is not going anywhere. So
Hmm.
instead of using social media, like, people have been using Facebooks and WhatsApp, or, just a straightforward, you just send your information through um, the social media, that is much less secure, because we all know, the
Right.
social media, they can analyze anything and all your data is not safe. While
Correct.
if you actually go through a dedicated telemedicine portal, where
Hmm.
you sign a contract with the company where they will be responsible for keeping the data safe. And if there
Right.
is a breach of data, then the company would be responsible, not the doctor, and patient would be
Right.
more assured. So that is one
Hmm.
thing that can be done, that the systems are set up in such a way that
Hmm.
the encryption and the data breach is not happening. So that's one
Correct.
one way of doing that. And the other one obviously is who owns the data. You have to give
Right.
the ownership to the patient, and then they can do what they like. So there have been
Correct.
instances where some of the companies are selling the data to pharmaceutical companies or others,
Mm-hmm.
but those things will come under the contractual arrangements what you make with those companies.
Correct, correct, correct. And well, when we're talking about you providing medical legal practices to people, especially now that you're in India and like you're not practicing, so you could be on a neutral grounds. So, tell me, how could it benefit people, especially in India, where there are many cases where either it's a wrong practice by the doctor, or like people are trying to dish out some money from a medical institution.
Absolutely. So this is the area where I can really provide a unique service, and the
Mm-hmm.
patients would be helped because many a times there is a genuine concern. They've had a complication and they were not explained about it. They did not know that this could happen, and rather than giving them full explanation, the doctor has just carried on making money, but
Hmm.
then the result is not good. So they can take it up further, and with my expertise in that area, I can help them to get adequate compensation if they deserve that, to be fair. But at the
Correct.
same time, I would also like to train doctors to say, look, you need to do things in a certain manner. So you need to have
Mm-hmm.
a proper informed consent. You need to explain these things to the patients. You need to have
Hmm.
records of everything. So all these things we can be telling doctors so to reduce their chances of frivolous cases. So where the
Right.
patient is unhappy because a complication has occurred, but the doctor is
Hmm.
actually not at fault because this
Correct.
complication is a known complication. But
Hmm.
if the doctor has no records of saying, I explained this to the patient signed
Hmm.
for this, here are my records, you can check on this date, I gave him this form, this information, and here are his signatures, and there is a record that I actually explained it. So there is a whole
Hmm.
process that they have to go through.
Correct.
Then the patient cannot claim that this was negligence. Negligence has to
Right.
be that something that other doctors would have done, this person had done differently or wrongly. So, to
Correct.
prove negligence, you have to prove that any other doctor in the situation would not have done this, what this doctor has done, and that was wrong. But then you have to
Hmm.
have evidence of that. So, you have to show
Right.
I did the right thing. Yes, these complications can occur. And if you look at the literature, there is 5% incidence of this complication. Out of
Hmm.
100 patients, 95 become okay, but 5% don't. But then you
Right.
should have told that to the patient. If you say, I
Right.
guarantee you,
Huh.
so there are no guarantees ever. If any doctor says that, then obviously they are lying. So they
Correct.
have to explain the risks and the benefits, a balance of that, and the patient
Hmm.
has to decide whether they want to go through the surgery. And then obviously the financial aspects come. They have to have the honesty in explaining, the integrity in saying this is the financial arrangement I have with this hospital or whatever. All those things come into it. So
Right. Right.
that's one of the things. I'm actually preparing some e-learning programs to train the doctors, especially the new
Okay.
medical students who qualified newly, to train them
Hmm. Hmm.
about
Hmm.
ethics of medicine, about communication skills, about things like breaking bad news. That's a huge
Right.
area which we are not trained in India in the medical schools. While here in the
Right.
UK, there are very, very good programs where you are trained to do these things. How to
Hmm.
talk to the patient when there is a complication that has occurred, how to take a
Right.
proper consent, how to explain to them, and how
Right.
to be honest about the financial transactions as well as what you've done. If something has happened at surgery, how do you explain? So those kind of
Correct.
things I would very much like to contribute to in the Indian scenario. And I hope that both the patients as well as the doctors would benefit, and we would not
Correct.
have this current kind of confrontational scenario that has developed in India, doctors on one side and patients on the other side. That should not be
Correct.
happening. We should have
Correct.
a
True.
trust relationship between doctors and patients. And the
Absolutely.
recent events, so many events where the irate patients and their relatives have, either attacked the doctors physically or their hospitals have been damaged. There have been so many reports. So
Exactly.
to avoid that, we must have this proper communication system, a trust building system. And if a complication
Right.
has occurred, they should go through the legal process of saying, yes, this was wrong, or no, this was right, and
Hmm.
compensate accordingly.
Correct. True. 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 So, very nice. And like Abhi, during the coronavirus time, and when you were like in India and you were at home, so did you learn any new things apart from your own profession? Did you try hands in cooking or something like that?
Yes, absolutely. That was a great opportunity. I have been
Okay.
cooking even before. I'm quite an independent
Hmm.
man. But obviously, Corona crisis gave me more opportunity to try my hands on new things. So learned
Hmm.
quite a few new dishes, new recipes. So that
Nice.
was absolutely a great opportunity.
Hmm. And like I was also told that you have been a radio jockey also. You have been a radio host. So tell us something more.
Who told you that?
A little birdie told
Yeah.
me.
Yes, that's actually a very interesting story. So I think your listeners would like to hear this. So I was
Right.
working in Southampton
Hmm.
as an eye surgeon, operating on patients and seeing. And I was sitting in my hospital cafeteria when this gentleman, Indian origin but with a British accent, he came to me and said, "Can I join you?" So I said
Hmm.
yes. And we started chatting. He said, "What do you do?" So I said, "I'm an ophthalmologist. I'm operating on patients here and I'm seeing."
Hmm.
I said, "What about you?" He says, I have a radio station. I'm a producer of a radio station here. And it's a
Okay.
community radio station where the lot of listeners are Asian listeners. So this is meant
Okay.
for the Asian community. So it's got all
Okay.
languages, Hindi, Punjabi, Urdu. And would you like to come and give an interview and do a phone in
Uh-huh.
to tell our Asian patients about eye problems, cataracts, diabetic, all those things? I said, yes, very much.
Huh.
That's a good thing. So we had a 2 hour radio session where there were a lot of patients calling in, asking their questions, and I was responding to that. So after this
Uh-huh.
2 hours of interview, which went off very well, and they got very good response. This
Hmm.
producer tells me, "You got a very good radio voice. Would you like to be RJ?" They call it RJ here, radio jockey. This
Yeah, yeah,
notified
yeah. Radio
radio
job.
jockey.
Yeah.
So I thought he was joking. I said, "You must be joking."
Hmm.
He said, "No, no, no. I'm
Right.
serious. I've got an offer for you. I
Hmm.
have. I will give you 80 hours of training in
Hmm.
as a broadcaster. So I'll teach you all the things that are required. How to speak with the
Right.
microphone, what to do. All those things, technical. How to use the software for as an RJ, how to get the phone in calls, how to respond. All those things. We'll have 80 hours of training. At the end of that,
Hmm.
you will get a certificate from the
Hmm.
university as skills, that you've been certified as a broadcaster in UK.
Right.
But in return, this will be free. You won't have to pay. In return,
Hmm.
I want you to volunteer for my radio station for 1 year
Okay.
as a free this thing. And I later
Okay.
on found out that there was a special program on Saturdays and Sunday, which he called
Hmm.
as Geet Mala, which was meant
Okay.
for the sort of slightly older age group. My time,
Okay.
'70s and '80s music, '60s, '70s, '80s music.
Okay. So
So
they were trying to replicate
exactly,
Geet Mala with Amir Sayani.
yes. So this is what I
Okay.
did, and then after 1 year, my contract had changed. I was offered a position in Cambridge. So I said,
Okay.
thank you very much. It was very nice. And I'm going to Cambridge. He said, oh, no, 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 you can't go. He says, that program is my most earning program now because he used to put in ads. That's where they make the money because it was
Right.
not a commercial station, but it was a community station.
Community
So the
station.
RJ would be voluntary free, but they had to make money from somewhere. And that was the
Correct.
ads in between. So because of the Asian community there, they had more listeners for that program than
Correct.
the others. So I said, how is that possible? I can't be traveling every weekend from Cambridge to Southampton. It's quite far. He says, no, I will
Correct.
give you the radio station. I said, what?
Okay.
So basically what he did was he gave me the whole database of that era of songs with the
Okay.
software on the laptop. And
Okay.
there was a widget, he called it Silver Box, which could
Okay.
connect to my high-speed internet at home in Cambridge.
Mm-hmm.
And he would transfer the calls through the telephone system.
Okay.
So I did for another 2 years. I carried on doing that program from my from my home in my pajamas
Okay.
because and nobody knew that I was actually not sitting there. But
So that's the beauty of radio, isn't it?
exactly. But before all this, when I took on that, I had to change my name because obviously I could not do that program in Southampton with all the patients knowing me as Dr. Dinesh Verma operating on my eye. And then suddenly
Correct.
he's telling about वहीदा रहमान ने जो गाना गाया था उस टाइम आज फिर मिलने की
Correct.
तमन्ना है.
Correct.
So I took on a pseudonym at that time. I was called Kant. So I presented as
Kant.
Kant, yeah,
Okay.
which he also agreed. He says, no, you can't use your Dr. Verma name. You
Correct.
have to use a pseudonym. So I took my mother's name and modified it. She was called Kanta. So I took
Okay.
Kant from that. And that's what I'm known
Cool.
as. Unity 101 radio station, Kant. आवाज की दुनिया के
Nice.
दोस्तों, आप सुन रहे हैं कांत को.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Cool. So, well, on that note, thank you very much, Dinesh, for coming on the Unnamed Podcast and like sharing your journey in radio as well as in ophthalmology and your journey throughout the globe and in the field of technology as far as AI is concerned, man.
You're most welcome. Thank you very much for having me on. It's a great program that you're doing.
Thank you very much, Dinesh.
So I hope कि you enjoyed this episode of the Unnamed Podcast जहाँ पे मैंने बात करी ophthalmologist दिनेश वर्मा से and we cover many things and I think ये मेरा सबसे लंबा podcast था अभी तक का but it was pretty interesting. I hope कि आपको भी podcast पसंद आ रहा है. In case you are loving this podcast, don't forget to follow this podcast wherever you are getting your podcast. और मैं आपसे मिलूंगा अगली बार एक और अमेजिंग पर्सनालिटी के साथ. टिल देन यू गाइस स्टे कूल, स्टे टाइट एंड लिव लाइफ ह्यूमन साइज.